Okay, let's get into it. We are back, and today, well, today is going to be a ride. We're going somewhere pretty strange.
I think ride is probably the perfect word for it, actually.
Yeah, and I don't mean strange in that, spooky lights flickering way, though. I guess there is a little bit of that.
There's a little bit of that for
But
sure.
I mean strange in the sense that we are going to start with a very relatable, almost mundane domestic argument about selling a painting to a friend. And by the time we're done, we're going to be standing on the skin of a multidimensional fruit, watching men in white fursuits fishing through the ice in a universe that might not even be ours.
It's one of those sessions that really just starts in the living room and ends up in the cosmos. There's no other way to put it.
It really, really is. So welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. Today we are looking at a very specific slice of the material. We're cracking open section 108 of the early sessions, book 3 of the Seth material.
And that was recorded on November 18th, 1964.
Exactly. And before we get the ball rolling, just the usual bit of housekeeping for everyone listening. This deep dive is, of course, going to be distributed completely free of charge on all major platforms, and it's for educational purposes.
We're just here to explore the ideas, which today are. They're pretty significant.
They really are.
You know, often when people approach this kind of material, this kind of channeled philosophy, they're expecting these grand, booming pronouncements.
Yeah.
Thus spake the universe.
Right, like a sermon from on high.
Exactly. But what I absolutely love about session 108 is how incredibly grounded it starts. It's so intimate. It's just Rob and Jane, that's Robert Butts and Jane Roberts, sitting in their living room in Elmira, New York, dealing with a very, very human emotion. A little bit of regret.
I love that. It makes it feel so much more real. It's not just, here's the grand secret of all reality. It's, hey, we sold that painting to our friend Sonja, and now I kind of miss it, and I feel a bit weird about it.
Precisely. But because this is a Seth session, that little pang of regret isn't just an emotion to be processed and then forgotten. It becomes a doorway. It becomes the launch pad for this incredible discussion on reincarnation, the nature of matter, and eventually this mind-bending cosmology of how the entire universe was actually built.
So let's dive right into that story. Segment 1, The Portrait of the Ottoman Warrior. Which I have to say, sounds like the title of a fantasy novel.
It really does. But no, it's about their friend Sonja.
Right. So in the session notes, Rob writes that their friend Sonja came to visit. She's a nurse, and she's in this huge transitional phase of her life. She's just married a doctor from Turkey.
And she's getting ready to move there. I mean, to uproot her entire life and join him.
That is a massive move, especially in 1964. I mean, that is a proper adventure.
A huge adventure. And right in the middle of all this personal upheaval, she has been obsessed for years with this one specific painting of Ripes. He mentions in the notes that she had urged him to sell it to her many, many times.
And finally, on this visit, he caves. He sells it, even though, as he notes, both he and Jane, or Rupert, as Seth calls him, were really attached to it.
Yeah, there was a sentimental connection there.
For sure. And Rob, being Rob, he immediately tries to rationalize it. And I love this part of the notes because it shows his whole mindset. He writes that he thought he finally understood the psychic reason she wanted it so badly.
He's trying to be the good student of metaphysics.
He's trying so hard. He's thinking, okay, maybe there's a reason for this. Maybe I'm influencing her psychically. Maybe she needs this painting for her journey. He completely intellectualizes the sale.
He does. He talks himself right into it. But then, of course, the second she leaves with the painting under her arm, all that intellectualization it evaporates. He and Jane are just sitting there looking at the blank spot on the wall.
And the feeling is just, we shouldn't have done that. They feel a palpable loss. It's such a human moment. You sell the car, you sell the old guitar, and then you just stare at the empty space where it used to be.
Totally. But then the session begins. Jane puts on her black glasses, goes into trance, her voice deepens, and the very first thing Seth addresses is that missing painting.
He doesn't waste any time with small talk.
Not at all.
And this is where it gets so fascinating. Seth, he validates their feeling of loss. He acknowledges the energy in the room has shifted. But then he pivots to explain why Sonja needed that painting. And it wasn't just because she liked the colors or, because it would look good in her new home in Turkey.
No. This is the big aha moment about how we interact with art, with objects. Seth says it's all about jumbled relationships.
Jumbled relationships. I like that phrase.
It's a great phrase. He says, and I'm quoting here, no doubt here of jumbled relationships as far as the personality is concerned. And then he just drops the bombshell. Seth reveals that Sonja, this American nurse from 1964, was once a warrior in the very early period of the Ottoman Empire.
A male warrior.
Correct. A male warrior. And suddenly, her marriage to a Turkish doctor and her decision to move to Turkey, it takes on a completely different light. It's not just a romantic life choice anymore.
It's a magnetic pull. A pull back to a past life location, as Seth calls it.
Yes. That is wild, isn't it? It implies our lives aren't just this random forward march. We're circling back to old stomping grounds.
We're like homing pigeons, but for our souls.
That's a great way to put it. And the painting. The painting was the key, was the trigger. Rob describes the portrait as having a figure with a turban, hinting at a Middle Eastern or Turkish background. And Seth says this: the painting always struck the personality deeply, reminding him of the bare and ancient land from which he had once come.
Wow, that gives me chills. Reminding him. Seth consistently uses the male pronoun there, referring to Sonja's personality.
He does, and that is so significant in this material.
It really is. It just completely highlights the fluidity of the soul. We get so hung up on our current identity. I am this, I am that. But Seth is just casually saying, nope, you were a male warrior in the Ottoman Empire, and now you're a female nurse in upstate New York. The gender is just a costume for the lifetime.
The inwardness, as he'll call it later, the core self, remains. The essence isn't bound by gender or nationality or time period. It just adopts these things as a form of camouflage for a specific experience.
Which we'll get into, but I want to go back to the part for a second, because think about what this means for you listening right now. You walk into a museum or you're scrolling online, you see a photo of a place, a landscape, and you feel this pull, this obsession.
You feel like you need to be there, or you need to own that image.
Yeah. And normally we just call that good taste or aesthetics.
Right. But Seth is suggesting that sometimes that art is acting as a subconscious bridge. Sonja wasn't just looking at a painting. She was looking into a mirror. A distorted mirror, maybe? But she was seeing a fragment of her own vast history staring back at her. That obsession wasn't just consumerism.
It was recognition.
It was recognition on a deep soul level.
It reframes the whole idea of why we decorate our houses, why we're drawn to certain styles. We aren't just decorating, we might actually be building these little shrines to who we used to be.
That's a beautiful way to think about it. And this core concept that the physical object, the painting, is just a trigger for a much deeper inner reality that leads us perfectly into the core metaphysics of this session.
Yeah, because if a painting is just a surface for a deeper truth, Seth basically argues that everything physical is just a surface.
This is where we get to the heavy hitters. Segment 2. Matter is camouflage.
A concept he comes back to again and again, but he really gives us a detailed breakdown here in session 108. He says it so plainly. Matter is, as you know, camouflage, the outwardness of energy.
The outwardness of energy. I love that phrase. Let's really break that down for anyone who might be new to this idea.
Yeah.
What does he mean by camouflage? Is he saying this desk I'm sitting at isn't real?
Right. Can I just put my hand through it? What's the deal?
And the answer is not exactly. He's not saying it's an illusion in the sense that it doesn't exist for us. He's saying it's a result.
Right.
It's a symptom.
Yeah.
The fundamental rule he gives is this: the outwardness is formed through the inwardness, not the other way around.
Okay. So the analogy I always come back to, and you can tell me if this is on the right track, is the movie projector.
It's a classic one for a reason. Go for it.
If you walk into a movie theater and you look at the screen, you see the movie, you see the actors, the scenery, the car chases. That's the outwardness. That's matter. That's what we can touch and see and measure.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to understand how that movie got there, you can't just analyze the screen with a microscope. You can't scrape off a piece of the screen and hope to find the actors inside.
No, you'll just find vinyl and maybe some dust.
Exactly. To understand the movie, you have to turn around and look at the projector in the little booth at the back of the room. The projector is the inwardness. The light is the energy. The film is the information.
That is a perfect analogy. And Seth gives a warning here that fits perfectly with that. He says, for this reason, a study of the outwardness will never result in true comprehension of the inwardness.
Which, let's be honest, is a pretty sick burn on purely materialist science.
In a way, it is. He's essentially saying, if you only dissect the physical world, if you only smash atoms together to see what's inside, you're just analyzing the paint on the canvas.
Yeah.
You're missing the painter. You're missing the engine that's generating the whole reality in the first place.
But he goes even further than just saying matter is a projection. He introduces this idea of the excess of energy.
Ah, yes. This is the part that really stood out to me from this session. The idea that this inner energy is never fully spent.
Right. He says, there is always an excess of this inwardness struggling to express itself. Think about what that means. Even after an entity, a consciousness, creates a physical body or a tree or a whole star, the energy behind it isn't used up. It's not a battery that runs down.
It's actually bursting at the seams. It's overflowing. It's constantly seeking new expression.
So we're not just static creations, we are. We're leaking creativity.
We are overflowing. We are constantly in a state of generation. Seth says, there is no energy that is not, to some extent, aware of itself. And because it's aware, and because it has this constant excess of power, it is always seeking to form new, more complicated gestalts.
Gestalts. That is a very Seth word. We should probably define that for anyone who hasn't run into it before.
It's a good idea. A gestalt is essentially a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. It's a complex, self-organizing pattern of consciousness. So a human being is a gestalt of cells and thoughts and emotions and atoms. The whole you is much more than just the pile of your component parts.
Got it. And this is where he connects it directly to reincarnation. He explains that entities, our core selves, our souls, are like master memory cells.
Master memory cells. I love that image. It sounds almost biological, doesn't it?
It does, like spiritual DNA.
Right. And he says these master cells don't die. They split. They regenerate. He says, and this is another quote, energy always regenerates itself. The inward energy forms gestalt after gestalt. And each gestalt itself then continues to go on, itself regenerating, forming new personalities which are never destroyed.
Okay, so let's trace this back to Sonja and the Ottoman warrior, just to make it concrete. Sonja is a new personality. She's a fresh expression. But the master memory cell that created Sonja also holds the complete data set for the Ottoman warrior personality.
Exactly. And the Ottoman warrior isn't gone or dead. That personality is still a living part of the whole gestalt, still contributing its experiences and data to the greater entity. It's like a family tree where all the ancestors are still alive and living in the same house as the descendants, just in different rooms.
That sounds like a very chaotic house.
It is. But it's a house built on this foundation of inwardness. And Seth makes a really profound point here that's worth repeating. The inwardness flows through and forms matter. And the inwardness remains when it is finished expression in any given form.
That's the guarantee of immortality right there in one sentence. The form changes, the camouflage drops away, but the inwardness, the core you, remains.
It's the projector, not the movie.
Right. So if we zoom out, I mean way out, if this is how a single person is formed, by this inward energy pushing out to create a camouflage suit, then how is the entire universe formed? Because Seth tackles that in this session too. And spoiler alert, it was not the Big Bang.
No, it wasn't a violent explosion of dead matter. According to Seth, it was a psychic accumulation.
Okay, this is segment 3, the birth of the universe. I really want to take our time with this because it's dense and honestly, it's quite beautiful. Seth describes the origin of the cosmos not as physics, but as psychology.
It's so casual how he just drops it in, isn't it? Oh, by the way, here's how Genesis actually happened.
Totally. Let me just explain the beginning of all time.
He describes a process that sounds almost biological, or maybe chemical, but its foundation is purely mental. He says it all started with possibilities inherent in inwardness.
Possibilities, not particles, not forces, possibilities.
Yes, these possibilities, he says, wanted to exist. They had an inherent drive to establish conditions to make their own existence possible. And he says they collected magnetically.
Magnetically. So ideas, possibilities, they have a magnetic charge.
In this context, yes. He says they collected about other like possibilities, setting up coherent fields of like attraction. So you can almost imagine these ideas floating in a void. A possibility of a physical world attracts another possibility of solidity. A possibility of life attracts a possibility of growth. They start to clump together.
It's like a snowball rolling down a hill, picking up more and more snow.
A psychic snowball. And this clumping eventually forms the first atoms. But here's the really mind-bending part. Seth says they formed atoms and molecules by spreading out a positive field. But as we know, you can't have a positive without a negative. So at the exact same time as they wove this meshwork of what we call matter, they also had to form a corresponding negative field.
Which gives us the universe of negative matter. We're definitely going to get to that in a second because the structure he lays out is just wild. But I want to stick on the atoms for a moment longer because Seth describes them in a way I have never heard any physicist describe them. He talks about mental enclosures.
This is such a crucial concept. He says that psychic characteristics group together into self-aware units, forming mental enclosures that can be compared to the smallest physical particle.
So an atom, or a subatomic particle, is a mental enclosure. It's like a little fenced-in area of consciousness.
Exactly. And they were hungry. They wanted to grow and become more complex.
Seth describes them as capturing other enclosures through this magnetic attraction, and it was cooperative. He says the two groups thusly joined, both benefited by the additional matter that they could form.
It's like they had this collective realization, hey, if we team up, we can build something way bigger and more interesting than just a single hydrogen atom.
It's that drive for complexity again, that excess of energy constantly pushing for more intricate forms. But then Seth mentioned something really fascinating. He says some of these early units closed their boundaries. They essentially became self-contained, relatively changeless physical units.
So these are the building blocks.
Yes, they stopped their own inward growth, in a sense, so they could become the stable bricks that other more active and creative units could then use to build more complex things, like stars and planets, and eventually us.
I just love that. It makes the universe feel so alive and cooperative. Even the fundamental bricks in the wall of reality made a conscious choice to be bricks, to serve a greater purpose. Innate, rather generalized consciousness is the phrase Seth uses. Nothing is dead. Nothing is purely mechanical. It's all consciousness deciding to play a specific role. The electron knows, on some level, that it's an electron.
Which brings us to the structure of the whole shebang, the visualization from this session that just completely blew my mind. Segment 4, the 3 layers of the fruit.
This is really the centerpiece of the session's cosmology. After explaining how matter formed, Seth tells us that this initial push of inward energy created not one, but 3 simultaneous universes.
3. Count them. 1, 2, 3. Running at the same time.
First, there's the physical universe, the one we're sitting in right now, the one we perceive with our 5 senses.
Okay, that one I know.
Second, the universe of negative matter.
Is that the same as antimatter?
Seth uses the term negative matter, and earlier in the sessions, he does equate it with what our scientists call antimatter. But he describes it more like a before image and an after image of our reality. And it's the necessary shadow side. It's the mold that shapes our clay. Our reality needs it to exist.
Okay, a bit weirder, but I can sort of grasp it. What's the third one?
The dream universe.
Now, hold on a minute. The dream universe is a structural layer of reality, like on par with the physical universe. We usually think of dreams as just, brain static from eating pizza too late.
According to Seth, absolutely not. He describes it as a plane of existence within and completely through, or on the other side of, while yet within the physical universe. It's a valid foundational field of reality.
So how do these 3 relate to each other? This is where the fruit comes in, right?
This is the fruit analogy. Seth says, and I'll quote again, they represent skins, layers of skin, all belonging to the same fruit.
That is such a vivid and simple image for such a complex idea.
It's brilliant. He says, someone holding the fruit might be able to peel away the layers. But as for the fruit itself, the layers, while making up the fruit, are to all intents and purposes separate.
So we are living on one layer of skin, the physical skin. The dream world is another layer of skin right next to it. The negative matter universe is another layer. But they are all wrapping around the same central core.
The same inwardness, the same pit of the fruit.
And this leads directly to his critique of space travel, which is kind of funny because this is 1964. The space race is in full swing. Everyone is looking up at the moon. Kennedy has made his big speech, and Seth is just sitting there in Elmira, New York, basically going, you guys are missing the entire point.
He's a little bit cheeky about it. He says, when you attempt space travel, for example, you're attempting to travel around the complete fruit, but only within or upon one layer of skin.
That is so humbling. We think we're Columbus, but we're just ants crawling on an apple.
It really is. He's saying that our rockets and our propulsion systems are just moving us horizontally across the surface. We aren't going in. We aren't finding the seed. We're just, as you said, crawling all over the peel.
The circle is indeed important, he says, but traveling in one dimension like that requires so much effort for so little actual progress. He's strongly implying that real travel, real exploration requires going through the layers.
Dropping into the fruit itself.
Which is what he claims consciousness can do and what the dream universe allows for. He says the dream universe connects all the layers. It's the connective tissue of the fruit.
And speaking of the pit, you mentioned that Seth makes a little pun here at the end.
He does. He's a big fan of wordplay. Toward the end of the session, he says, "It amuses me that your word pit, in sound, is like a core and suggesting depth for considering inwardness as the pit.
So pit as in a deep hole, suggesting depth.
And pit as in the seed of a fruit, the core from which everything grows. He says, you see how the matter is built around it, meaning the flesh of the fruit is just the matter protecting the pit, which is the core of inward energy.
It all ties together so elegantly.
It really does. So we've got this massive cosmological structure. We've got the history of the universe as a psychic event. But Seth, and this is why I love this material so much, he always brings it back down to the specific people in the room. He brings it back to Rob and Jane.
Mm-hmm. Which brings us to segment 5, art, perspective, and the woo.
We talked about Rob's painting of the Ottoman warrior at the start, but in this session, Seth gives a full-on critique of Jane's art too, and it is, frankly, hilarious.
It is pretty funny. So Rob was an artist by trade, a painter. Jane was primarily a writer who also dabbled in painting. And apparently Jane really struggled with perspective in her art. Her paintings looked a bit, well, wonky.
Distorted, flat, a bit off, and Seth explains why. And it's not because she needs glasses or more art classes.
No. Seth links their distinct artistic styles directly to how they each perceive and process inwardness. He says Rob paints the outwardness, the finished object, the camouflage, in a way that hints at the soul inside it. Rob looks at a tree and paints the tree so perfectly that you can feel the life within it.
Right. He says of Rob, you hint at the significance within, and you bring it out actually through the form. I mean, that's high praise for an artist from a non-physical entity.
It really is. But Jane, Seth says, Jane Rubert tries to catch the inwardness before its moment of construction, with the form not yet fully in appearance.
She's trying to paint the ghost before it's even had a chance to put on the white sheet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which leads to this great line. It is for this reason that he has so much difficulty with his perspective. He's saying her perspective is off because she's trying to paint a dimension that doesn't follow the rules of 3D physical perspective. She's painting from the inside out.
I just love the idea of a spirit guide basically acting as an art critic. Yeah, your perspective's all messed up, but that's because you're seeing in 4 dimensions, so nice try.
It's also a really beautiful metaphor for their partnership, and Seth points this out. Rob deals with the formed, the concrete, what Seth calls the frozen nature of inwardness. Jane deals with the chaos, the raw energy, the unformed possibilities, and they help each other grapple with those opposing but complementary forces.
You have both helped each other immensely in this way. It's a very sweet, affirming moment. But speaking of grappling with the unformed, we have to talk about the psi-time experiment.
Oh, yes. The psychological time experiments. This was their own practice of entering a light trance state to try and consciously perceive other realities.
And the imagery they get in this session is just, it's like a Salvador Dali painting that got left out in the sun too long.
It is deeply surreal.
So Ruin describes seeing a skull.
Yes, but not just any skull. He describes a skull, rather humorous, popping up on a wobbly stem above a box of some kind, like a jack-in-the-box toy.
A jack-in-the-box skull. Simultaneously terrifying and hilarious.
Right. And Seth doesn't dismiss it as just a weird brain glitch. He implies these are valid perceptions. But the one that really stands out to me, the one we teased in the intro, is Rob's ice fishing vision.
Okay, set the scene for us. This is the visual I want to leave people with today.
So Rob is lying down, doing his psi-time exercise, and suddenly he's not in his room in Elmira anymore. He is perceiving from a point high up in the air looking down. He sees a vast, white, snow-covered landscape, white mountains, and a really, really vivid blue sky.
Okay. Sounds peaceful so far.
And he sees a perfectly round hole that's been cut into a sheet of ice. And near the hole, there are 2 men.
And what are they wearing?
This is the detail. 2 men wearing white fursuits. And they're moving about the hole, apparently fishing through the ice.
Men in white fursuits fishing on a frozen planet. And Rob says the scene flickered at full strength. It felt completely real to him.
And Jane had her own vision, too, which was just as strange. She saw a funny, tall cylinder structure covered with redwood, and she clearly heard the name Toby.
Toby the Cylinder.
Toby the Cylinder.
Now, the skeptic in me, the rational part of my brain, wants to say, okay, they're just daydreaming. This is hypnagogic imagery. But Seth claims these aren't just random neurons firing off.
Not at all. Seth suggests that these are genuine glimpses into other layers of the fruit. They might be perceptions of the climate conditions of other planes of existence. Or they could be symbolic representations of energy patterns. When Rob sees the men in white fursuits, he might be remote viewing an actual location somewhere in our vast physical universe, or he might be seeing a scene from the dream universe layer we talked about earlier.
It connects right back to that idea that the universe is just teeming with life and activity that we can't see because we are locked into our specific frequency. We're staring so hard at the movie screen, and these visions are like little glimpses of the projectionist changing the reel in the booth.
Or glimpses of the movie playing in the theater next door.
The theater next door that's showing ice fishing with Yetis.
Exactly. And you should note how Seth encourages this. He tells Rob that his experiences are going to become even more vivid. He's training them. He's saying, don't just sit here and listen to me dictate philosophy. Go look for yourselves. Use your inner senses to peel back the skin of the fruit.
It's empowering for us listening, too. It's not just about Rob and Jane being special. It suggests that we all have this hardware. We all have these inner senses.
We do. We are all inwardness at our core. We all have the capacity to look away from the camouflage if we choose to.
So, after all that, what does it all mean? Let's try and bring this home. We've gone from a portrait of a Turkish warrior to the psychic birth of atoms to the skin of a cosmic fruit.
I think the central thread that ties all of this together is the concept of expression.
Okay. Say more about that.
Seth keeps coming back to that excess of energy, the inwardness that is struggling to express itself. The universe didn't happen by accident or through some cold mechanical process. It happened because consciousness was bursting with creativity. It needed to make atoms. It needed to make stars and galaxies.
And on a micro level, Sonja needed that painting to express a hidden, ancient part of her own soul. Rob needs to paint to express the outward form. Jane needs to write to express the inner chaos.
Yes, we are like pressure valves for this cosmic creative energy.
We are the outlets. Reality is spontaneous and constantly self-generating. We aren't finished products sitting on a shelf. We're the leading edge of this ancient energy trying to say something new, to create something that hasn't existed before.
That is a profoundly liberating thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
It means that my desire to create something, or to change my life, or even my weird, unexplainable obsession with a particular piece of music or art,
Yeah.
it's all part of the engine of the universe.
It is the fruit growing. It's the skin expanding.
So if you're listening to this and you feel that pressure, that excess energy that Seth is talking about, maybe don't ignore it. Maybe don't suppress it. Maybe that's the universe itself trying to build a new layer through you.
There is no energy that is not, to some extent, aware of itself. Trust that awareness within you.
I think that is a perfect place to wrap up this particular deep dive into the mind-bending world of Session 108.
It has been a trip.
From Elmira to the cosmos.
A huge, heartfelt thank you to the source of this incredible material. This deep dive was, of course, based on the Seth material, which is published by the New Awareness Network.
And we really cannot stress this enough. We are just scratching the surface here. If you want to go straight to the source, and we highly, highly recommend that you do, please study the Seth material books for yourself. You can find them at the New Awareness Network website and bookstore.
That URL is sethcenter.com/the-early-sessions. Go check it out. Support the publishers who work so hard to keep this material available for all of us.
Absolutely. It's so important.
So I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over this week. A little bit of homework for your own inwardness.
Let's hear it.
Seth says, you are inwardness wearing a physical suit. You are the energy, not the camouflage. So if you were to strip away the suit, if you stripped away your job, your name, your body, even your gender, as we saw with Sonja, what is left? What is that core inner energy trying to say that maybe your words or even your actions can't?
That's the question, isn't it?
Think about it. Maybe even try some psychological time of your own. Just, watch out for the jack-in-the-box skulls.
And the men in white fur.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Stay curious.
Good evening.